Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so excited to be with Atalie today. We are going to discuss a wealth of topics that are so interesting for us first gen, second gen, and just anyone that identifies as Latino. So, Atalie, thank you so much. How are you?
We're doing okay. I like to always give an honest response, but I'm really grateful that I get a chance to connect with you to talk about, the beautiful insights that we're going to talk about for all of our first gen listeners. So I feel grateful, but just like anything, we're hanging in there.
It's been a wild couple of months for our community, and I think we're all still reeling. And I think that given all of the hardships out there, now more than ever, it's time for us to think about taking care of ourselves. So, what does wellness mean for Latinas?
That is a beautiful question, and I feel like it's multi-layered, but I think the best way that I could say like what is wellness for Latinas is really, I think it's a lot about establishing boundaries. It's about practicing our agency. And it's really about using our voice. So, it's being able to establish those boundaries either at work or with our family that sometimes, can be very hard. And agency and the choices that we make and the freedom to do that, right? Even though we have our culture who influences us so heavily. But, wellness is just all of those things. And it's kind of what you as a Latina need to really prioritize your needs.
So, you and I had a conversation where we discussed that sometimes as Latinas have difficulty taking up space in this wellness
Mm.
world. How do you see that coming through, with our cohort?
Yeah, I think I think wellness primarily has focused on a certain persona as far as who it's for, right? And what it means to take care of ourselves. And for me, taking up space and how that shows is being able to really like highlight what it is that is important for us and not being afraid to do that. But it also means like going to a wellness class, if that's Pilates, and like welcoming yourself in that space. Body is welcome, which I think is really important regardless of your size, regardless of the color. And also too, like as a business owner, right? And being able to advocate and say like, yeah, like I have a product or I have a service that I love to offer and it has my culture infused into it, and being able to showcase that through and knowing that we deserve to, that I think as Latinas deserve to buy products from Latinas.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that those are all really practical ways of owning this space and something that feels maybe not natural because we didn't see our mothers and our grandmothers have those practices. There are certain things that we love about our culture, but there's also things that we can borrow from other cultures. And I think the right to take care of ourselves is one of them. And I think that Latinas, we often overlook that. Everyone in the family, the kids, the husband, the parents, before we take care of ourselves.
Yeah, and I'll share with you that you mentioned our grandmothers, and my abuela was a big role model for me, but she's the last person to ever think about like, resting and even, taking up a time to go and go to the salon or anything like that. So it's one of those things where it's like almost ingrained to us that it's just like you're the last person. Like everybody eats before you type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can all point to strong females in our families that have that attitude, right? So then we grow up thinking that that's the way to go. And then you find yourself as an adult running ragged and maybe not feeling like your tank is full because you were busy filling all the other tanks. Tell me a little bit about, how this insight plays into your consulting work. I know, you focus on bringing healing center practices to leadership. So tell me a little bit about how, these two worlds meet.
I love that question. So yeah, so a lot of the work that I do in consulting, right? I do leadership development, I do organizational culture, but really what I found is that the workplace and a lot of leaders need healing, right? And I say that healing leaders heals workplaces. And so being able to also um, help leaders prioritize their needs with my consulting work, with my trainings, with my experiences that I design is I think a big infusion of those two worlds and that they shouldn't be separate, right? It shouldn't be like, hey, I have to work and then maybe I'll have a time for myself or I can establish boundaries or practice self-care. It's more actually that in order for you to fulfill your work and do an amazing job, you need to take care of yourself, right? It's that whole like you have the what do they call it? The mask in the airplane that you need to put the mask on yourself first. And that's something that I actually really do teach through my consulting work and with my trainings is that like self-care is infused into it. It's a core part of you as a leader and healing yourself and being able to practice that is super crucial to actually like fulfilling the work that you do and your teams and your environment.
Are there any, tips and tricks that you offer leaders in terms of how they can put on that oxygen mask on themselves before they put it on anybody else? I know we talked about your routine and how you start with positive affirmations and how that can have a big positive impact on your day. So, are there any tips like this that you offer your leaders for them to bring into the workplace?
Yeah, I think everybody's journey is different, right? Like there's a lot of folks that I work with, especially a lot of women of color who are mothers. And I think being able to say that like what I practice may be a little bit maybe different for someone who has children and a family, right? But I think something that I say is that an invitation to pause before you take any action is always something that is very practical, but it's something that makes a huge significant difference, right? So even when you wake up in the morning and you think about are you checking your phone right away, right? Like inviting them to actually take a pause and say, am I looking to care for everything else before I care for myself as soon as I wake up? Is super huge. So invitation to pause in anything is something when I say it's like the core of mindfulness. And it's something that it's like a big segue into actually being able to have a self-care plan and being able to actually sustain something, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think pausing can save us from a lot of mistakes and it can also
Yes.
help recenter us. I know for a fact this morning I started with fires, right? So my kid didn't want to eat breakfast. I got bad news at
Mm,
work and just taking a moment to say, okay, yes, this is all happening, but we can still move on with the day or there's still an opportunity for the day to get a little bit better. I think offers a lot of value because you just sometimes let the things happening in your day dictate how things are going instead of you reigning in control. I find myself having that pause to help me say, okay, I can't just continue being reactive. Like, I need to take a moment, center myself, and realize, yes, all of these things are going on, but I still get to choose how I react to them. And I think that that's why the pause is so valuable.
yeah, and I'll even add to that, or just giving yourself grace for today, right? Knowing that you had that type of morning, and knowing that that's something that you've navigated already right before 10 a.m. is like, okay, I give myself grace today. Like if I am feeling a certain type of way, I know that it's because I had a tough morning, and you're not going to shame yourself, right? For your feelings and for your emotions and just be like, yeah, you know what? That did happen and I have an invitation to respond, but it's like I'm not going to punish myself, right? If I'm not feeling 100% later on. Like this is everything that I just tackled right before you know, start of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. It gets tough to implement those pauses, and it's really, really important. I think another way that I pause is journaling, and I know you and I share
Mm.
this practice. I just had a recent conversation with someone where I said, "I know it sounds nerdy, I know it sounds woo-woo, but it works." There's something about putting pen to paper and
Yes.
getting your thoughts, in that way, organized in that way that is magical.
Oh my god, yes. I love, love, love journaling, and it's something that I invite everybody to practice it. It's just like you said, there is something magical that when you're able to put your thoughts into paper, when you're able to practice even gratitude and listing the 5 things that you love or you're grateful for in that day, I feel like it's really therapeutic, and it's also like a sense of release, right? Like you get to actually put everything that's going on in here somewhere else. So I love that we both share that, and I invite everybody who may be listening to take take an invitation to try it, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah, I love it. And I see a little Virgen de Guadalupe candle behind
Yes.
the mantle. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, I am Latina, right? So that's obvious. But, La Virgen has been such a core essential to just like my culture. It reminds me so much of my grandma. And it's also a lot of like my spirituality, right? Knowing that like I grew up always like saying like you pray to the Virgen, being able to kind of center myself on that. And I always have that there because I don't want to forget who I am. I'm very proud of my roots. And she's just a really reminder of that.
And what is the difference for you between being religious and being spiritual? I feel that, a lot of us first gen, we grew up with parents that were very, very religious. And then, we become adults and we have the choice. Like, do we continue going to mass every Sunday? Do we continue, praying the rosary every chance that we get? And sometimes we opt for more spiritual practices than religious. At least personally, I know that that was my journey. So, what is in your world the difference between being religious and then being spiritual?
Yeah. Well, that's a very like loaded question. But I think for me is I had a very similar experience, right? So I grew up Catholic, I grew up going to church, I did my first communion, I did the whole thing. And some of my family is still really religious, but I don't necessarily practice or an indoctrination of a certain type of like faith in the sense that my spirituality is multifaceted, right? Like I do also support a lot of spiritual practices from different cultures. Some of them are also very ancestral as well, and so I think in terms of the difference is that, I don't necessarily have one specific religion where you follow all of the rules and all of the beliefs and all of the traditions versus, I think really kind of aligning myself with what feels really good for me and my heart. And knowing that part of that too is still, I can, La Virgen, right? And I still pray, but also knowing that like there's other things and other practices in spirituality and even like manifesting, for example, that are considered like not traditional that I believe and have really transformed my life.
I mean, I find a lot of parallels between manifesting and praying. Like,
Yeah.
feel that, if you think about the practice that our mothers and grandmothers had, where they will pull out a rosary and think through something that they wanted to happen, whether it be someone that they knew that was ill and they wanted them to, their health to get better or an outcome for the family. To me, there's so many parallels from, just sitting down and kind of finding space to think through the outcomes that you want and then manifesting. I feel that there's so much there.
I love that you said that because in a lot of ways I've thought about that, but I think I've been too afraid to say it out loud. And I think you're right because I think a lot of that is choose just the very intention behind it. It's like the thought and the practice in itself. So whatever like form that comes by, it's just like the intention behind it. So yeah, I think you're onto something.
Yeah, it's funny to think about it in that way, but I have so many memories of, the women in my family just kind of
Mhm.
pulling out their prayer beads and wishing for something good to happen. And it's a comforting thought to know that there's someone out there putting all of that positive energy into an outcome that you would want, whether it be feeling better or, like I
Mm,
mentioned, any other thing that was going on in the family. So I want to touch upon the bitter because it's part of your brand and part, of your name. So tell me a little bit about that. What is it that you reference when you talk about bitter?
yeah. So the name of my business is the Bitter Woman Network. I say that my story really comes from me being bitter, right? I'm an eldest daughter, I'm first gen. I grew up with a lot of expectations, a lot of responsibilities, and also there's still a lot of like anger that I held inside of me. And so for me, when I started my healing journey, it was really about like tending to those wounds that I held as being bitter, right? Being angry, being resentful. And I named my business after it because it's my story. It's also the transformation that, I also serve, right? That healing is possible and that bitterness is more of a story versus something that we need to look negative on. So I'm the bitter woman.
I love it. And I love how you're taking a word that can have a negative connotation and making it your own and saying, I'm owning this, right? That I think is really special.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you for the time that you gave us today. So, where can our audience find you and find a little bit more of your work?
Yeah, well, thank you. So you can Find us at www.thebitterwoman.com. If you're interested in any leadership development or organizational consulting, you can also find us on Instagram. So Heal with Atalie, that's my personal account. And then we also have Network on it on IG. So if you are interested in learning more, connecting with us, we're really big on community. We'd love to be friends there.
And I can attest her Instagram is a wealth of knowledge, and somehow it always hits in the right way. Like, I'm
Uh,
scrolling through my feed, and she'll post something, I needed this. So thank you
Thank
for,
you.
doing God's work in that way where you're giving us little morsels of very practical and insightful, learnings that we can take to our everyday life. And I think, as Latinas, we all have to stick together, and we also have to realize that even though it might feel isolating, the experience isn't in a silo, right? There's a lot of feelings and a lot of firsts that many of us are going through. And it's just building that community and taking a peek at your comment section, and realizing that we're not alone.
Yes, thank you so much for saying that. And also, thank you for just the work that you're doing, right? For uh, creating space for us in the wellness industry, something that we can go ahead and, take pride in and to also really take care of ourselves as well. So, as you said, right, I think we are stronger when we're unified together. So, yeah, let's take up space.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today. Everybody, please go find her social media accounts. I promise it's very, very worthwhile to become a part of Adelie's world. Thank you so, so much, and we'll chat soon.
Thank you.